I stared at the transfer history on my phone screen. Ryan Parker had sent 500,000 yuan to Grace Miller with a note that read, "Baby, this is the down payment for our new house." Our new house? Ryan and I had been married for 3 years, and we were still living in the apartment my parents had given me as a wedding gift. He had never mentioned buying a new home before. What made my heart turn cold wasn't just the note, it was the transfer time. 11 p.m., last night. At that very moment, he had been lying beside me, telling me good night and kissing me on the forehead. My hands trembled as I scrolled further through the transaction records. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, all transferred to Grace Miller. Over the past 3 years, the total amount had reached more than 2 million yuan. All that money came from the living expenses I gave him. I had always thought Ryan was a poor but ambitious man, someone who wanted to build his own business. To support him, I transferred money to him every month. My parents had opposed our marriage, but I had argued with them fiercely, insisting that love wasn't about wealth or status. In the end, he had used my money to provide for another woman. "Lena, why aren't you asleep yet?" Ryan's voice came from behind me. I quickly locked my phone and forced myself to sound calm. "I'm about to go to bed," I said evenly. He walked over and hugged me from behind. "I have to go on a business trip for a few days tomorrow. Take care of yourself while I'm gone, okay?" Business trip? I immediately thought of that note in his transfer, down payment for our new house. Was he planning to go house hunting with Grace Miller? "Where's your business trip this time?" I asked. "Qingdao, there's a project we need to negotiate," he said naturally, not showing a single hint of guilt. But just yesterday, Grace had posted her location on WeChat. It said Qingdao. I almost laughed out loud. 3 years of marriage, and I hadn't realized what kind of man I was living with. "You should get some rest," I said quietly. "You have an early flight tomorrow." He kissed me lightly on the cheek. "You're such a good wife." Yes, I was a good wife, so good that I'd been deceived for 3 whole years without knowing it. After he fell asleep, I quietly got out of bed and picked up his phone. The password was still my birthday. At least that much hadn't changed. I opened his WeChat messages. What I saw shattered me completely. "Ryan, I miss you so much. When can we finally be together openly? Soon, baby. I'm trying to get a divorce from her, but she treats you so well. Can you really do that to her?" "Of course. She's just an ATM. If it weren't for her money, I would have divorced her long ago." "What about our baby?" My hands began to shake uncontrollably. "Grace Miller was pregnant. Don't worry, once I'm divorced, I'll marry you. Our baby won't be born out of wedlock. I love you, Ryan. I love you too, Grace. Wait for me." There were countless other messages, each one like a knife stabbing deeper into my chest. So in his eyes, I was nothing but a foolish, wealthy woman. He had never loved me. Our 3-year marriage had been nothing more than a carefully planned lie. I glanced at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. Ryan was fast asleep, completely unaware that his secret had been exposed. Quietly, I stepped out onto the balcony and made a phone call. "Mr. Lewis, I need your help with something," I said softly. "Lena, it's late. What's wrong?" David Lewis, an old friend of my father's, was a private investigator who specialized in corporate cases. "I want you to investigate my husband, Ryan Parker." "Ryan Parker? You've been married for 3 years, haven't you?" "Yes, but I've realized I don't actually know anything about him." David paused for a few seconds before replying. "I understand. Give me a week." After hanging up, I stood by the balcony, looking back at the man sleeping soundly in our bed. He looked peaceful, almost innocent. But who could have guessed that behind that face was such a filthy heart? For him, I had done everything. I had argued with my parents. I had given up my chance to study abroad. I had turned down men who were far better than him. I had truly believed he was the one I could entrust my life to. But to him, I was nothing more than a source of money. I remembered the first time we met. He had told me he was a startup entrepreneur, poor but ambitious, determined to build a better future. I had once been moved by Ryan's sincerity, thinking he was different from all those men who only cared about my family's wealth. Looking back now, I realize he was nothing but a skilled actor, so good that he fooled everyone, even my parents. They had opposed our relationship from the start, saying he wasn't good enough for me. I had fought them with all my heart, insisting that love couldn't be measured by money. Now I finally understand. The look in their eyes back then had never been wrong. Ryan Parker was nothing more than a con artist, and I had been a foolish woman caught in his lies. But that was fine. If he could act for 3 years, then so could I. I would show him exactly what happens when someone dares to deceive the daughter of the Lewis family. Early the next morning, Ryan woke up and began packing his luggage. I made him breakfast, acting as gentle and attentive as always. "Be careful on the road, and don't skip your meals," I said softly while straightening his tie. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of myself," he replied with that same fake tenderness before leaning down to kiss me lightly on the lips. "I love you." I smiled and answered, "I love you too." Those 3 words used to make my heart race, my face flush with warmth. Now they only made me sick to my stomach. Still, I kept smiling. If I was going to act, I might as well play the part to the end. Ryan pulled his suitcase to the door. I walked him out and waved. "Goodbye, honey?" "Goodbye, sweetheart," he said, flashing me a loving smile before closing the door behind him. The moment the door clicked shut, the smile on my face disappeared. "Ryan Parker, we'll see each other again soon, and when we do, you'll understand what it means to mess with the wrong woman." As soon as he left, I started taking action. The first thing I needed to do was uncover his true background. I opened my laptop and logged into the internal business network of the Lewis Group, my family's corporation. Our company's connections in the business world were extensive. Digging up information on one person wasn't difficult. Ryan Parker, 28 years old, born in a rural area of Henan province. Both parents were farmers, and he had a younger brother still in college. After graduating, he worked as a salesman for several small companies with very little income. 3 years ago, he suddenly went from being a salesman earning 3,000 yuan a month to becoming a so-called entrepreneur. And that startup capital, his first investment, had come directly from me. I still remember it clearly. I gave him 500,000 yuan when he told me he wanted to start a tech company and just needed a bit of seed money to get things moving. Without a second thought, I transferred the money to him. Now I realize the entire thing was nothing but an elaborate scam. He used my money to register an empty shell company, then transferred the rest to Grace Miller. Grace Miller, 26 years old, a graduate of a prestigious university. She had been Ryan's college sweetheart. After graduation, her family arranged a good job for her, while Ryan couldn't keep up and was left behind. They broke up soon after. But judging by the transfer history, they had never truly lost contact. In other words, while Ryan was pursuing me, he was still hung up on Grace. He only married me to gain access to the Lewis family's resources. And as for Grace Miller, she wasn't innocent either. She knew perfectly well that Ryan was married, yet she still clung to him, even getting pregnant with his child. What a perfect match they made. 2 shameless people meant for each other. I let out a cold laugh and continued my search. It turned out Grace had recently quit her job, citing health issues. Obviously, that was just an excuse. She had left because of her pregnancy. As for Ryan's so-called business trip, I was certain it was just a cover for taking her to a prenatal checkup. The thought made me sick. That man, pretending to be gentle and loving in front of me while living a double life behind my back. They both thought I was a fool, someone they could manipulate however they wanted. Well, I would make sure they learned exactly how this fool fights back. I picked up my phone and dialed David Lewis. "Mr. Lewis, I need your help with something," I said calmly. "What's going on, Lena?" he asked immediately. "I need you to track Ryan Parker and Grace Miller's recent movements," I told David Lewis firmly. "I want to know everything they do, every step, every meeting, every lie." "No problem," he replied. "Give me 2 hours, and I'll get back to you." After hanging up, I began mapping out my plan. If Ryan wanted to play games, then I would play right alongside him, only better. I wanted him to taste what it felt like to be manipulated and betrayed. By noon, David texted me. Ryan and Grace were indeed in Qingdao, staying at the same hotel. They had even visited a real estate sales office to look at a seaside villa worth 3 million yuan. Ryan had already paid the deposit, naturally, with my money. I scrolled through the photos David sent me. In them, Ryan had his arm around Grace's waist, as they laughed and chatted intimately. Her belly was already beginning to show, and he was carefully shielding her, his hand resting protectively on her back. The scene was almost picture-perfect, warm, tender, affectionate. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have thought they were a loving married couple. Unfortunately for them, the man in those photos already had a wife, and that wife was now planning his destruction. I saved every photo and piece of evidence, then began executing the first step of my plan. I sent Ryan a message. "Honey, I miss you so much." His reply came almost instantly. "I miss you too, baby." "Is work going well?" I asked. "Pretty smooth. I should be back tomorrow." He lied without hesitation. His face never changed even through text. Truly a natural-born liar. "Okay, I'll wait for you to come home," I wrote back. "Sure. Take care of yourself, sweetheart," he answered. I put the phone down, my expression icy. "If you like acting so much, Ryan, then let's see who performs better." That afternoon, I went to the bank. It was time to freeze every account that Ryan could possibly touch. After all, the money was mine. I had every right to control it. Thanks to the influence of the Lewis Group, the bank cooperated without hesitation. Less than an hour later, all of Ryan's bank accounts, including his company's, were frozen. The official reason: suspected money laundering under investigation. Just like that, Ryan Parker became a man with nothing. I wanted to see how long he could keep up his little charade without my money to back it. By evening, my phone rang. Ryan's voice was frantic. "Lena, something's wrong." "What happened?" I asked, feigning confusion. "All my bank accounts are frozen. The bank says it's some kind of money laundering investigation. It has to be a mistake. Can you ask your dad for help?" "What? How could that happen?" I exclaimed in mock shock. "Don't worry, I'll call my dad and have him look into it." "Thank you, Lena. I don't know what I'd do without you," he said, his tone full of gratitude, as if he were truly a man in distress. If I hadn't already known the truth, I might have been moved by his performance. But now, I saw him clearly for what he was. "You're my husband. Of course, I'll help you," I said gently. "It might take some time to sort out, though. Do you still have any cash on hand?" "Yeah, I still have a bit left. It should be enough for now," he lied easily. According to David's investigation, Ryan had less than a few thousand yuan left, barely enough to cover a few days' expenses in Qingdao. "That's good. I'll try to get it resolved as soon as possible," I said sweetly. "Thank you, baby. I love you." "I love you too," I replied before ending the call. As soon as the line disconnected, a cold laugh escaped my lips. Ryan Parker had no idea that everything happening to him was orchestrated by me. He thought I was just a naive heiress, someone easy to deceive and control. But now, he was about to learn exactly what it costs to underestimate the wrong woman. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, I received a text from David. "Ryan and Grace had a fight this morning," he wrote. "It started when Ryan suddenly couldn't access any of his money. Grace thought he'd changed his mind about buying the house, and they ended up arguing loudly at the hotel. Grace Miller had burst into tears, accusing him bitterly. 'You promised to give me a home, and now you're going back on your word.' Ryan tried to explain himself. 'My bank accounts were frozen. It's just a temporary issue, an unexpected problem.' But Grace didn't believe a word. 'That's just an excuse. You never intended to divorce her. You're still after her family's money, aren't you?' She jabbed a finger at his face, furious. 'You're a liar, Ryan.' 'No, Grace, please, listen to me,' he pleaded. 'I don't want to hear it. If you really love me, then divorce her right now.' Listening to the recording that David Lewis sent me, I couldn't help but laugh. Two dogs fighting, neither one clean. Ryan must have been losing his mind. On one side, he had the wealthy, gullible wife he was exploiting. On the other, his so-called true love, who happened to be pregnant and now demanding everything he'd promised. I couldn't wait to see which one he would choose. Around noon, Ryan called me. 'Lena, I'm coming home a little early,' he said. 'Why? I thought you hadn't finished your work yet.' 'It's almost done. Besides, I want to handle the issue with the frozen accounts myself.' In other words, Grace refused to calm down, and he couldn't deal with her, I thought, suppressing a smirk. 'All right, then I'll come pick you up at the airport,' I offered sweetly. 'No need. I'll get home on my own.' 'How could I not?' I replied warmly. 'You're my husband. Of course I'll come.' There was a pause, then he sighed. 'All right, I'll see you then.' At 4 in the afternoon, I arrived at the airport right on time. Ryan came out of the terminal dragging his suitcase, looking utterly exhausted, probably from the fight he'd had with Grace the night before, and a sleepless night that followed. "Sweetheart," I called out brightly, running up to him and wrapping my arms around him. His body stiffened for a moment, then he quickly regained his composure. "You must have had a long trip," he said softly, kissing my forehead. His acting was still as flawless as ever. "It's nothing. I'm just happy to see you," I said, looping my arm through his. "Come on, let's go home." On the drive back, Ryan seemed restless, his mind clearly somewhere else. His phone kept vibrating, but he didn't dare even glance at it. I was sure it was Grace. "Is something wrong?" I asked gently. "Work problems?" "No, just a few messages from clients," he said quickly. Another lie. I watched his expression through the rearview mirror. His brow was furrowed, eyes heavy with worry. It looked like Grace was really putting pressure on him. "Oh, right," I said casually. "I talked to my dad about your bank issue. He said it might take some time to investigate." "Thank you, Lena," Ryan said, reaching for my hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "We're husband and wife," I replied sweetly. "It's only natural we help each other. But you must be tight on cash right now, aren't you? Do you need me to advance you something?" His eyes lit up instantly. "Really?" "Of course," I said with a smile. "Your problem is my problem. Then, could you transfer 200,000 first? The company's in a tough spot." 200,000? So that's how much Grace's little tantrum cost him. "All right," I said calmly. "I'll transfer it once we get home." Ryan let out a relieved sigh. "Thank you. I'll pay you back, I promise." "Pay me back? With what? Lies and fake smiles?" When we got home, I immediately transferred the 200,000 to his account. His mood visibly improved. "I'll take a shower first, then we'll have dinner together," he said lightly. "Okay," I answered. "I'll get dinner ready." As soon as he entered the bathroom, I grabbed his phone and opened his messages. Just as I expected, more than a dozen texts from Grace Miller. "When are you coming back? I'm scared being here alone. The baby is yours. You have to take responsibility. If you don't come back, I'll tell your wife everything." The last message must have terrified him, because his reply came fast. "Don't be angry, I'm figuring it out. You promised you'd marry me. I will, I swear. Just give me a little more time. I can't wait anymore. I'm going to find her myself. Grace, please, don't do that. I'll come back to Qingdao tomorrow, I swear." I stared at the screen and let out a cold laugh. Tomorrow, Ryan Parker plans to return to Qingdao? Then what excuse will he come up with tonight? I genuinely couldn't wait to see how he would continue his performance. At dinner, Ryan sat across from me, his mind clearly elsewhere, unable to focus on anything. Ryan's phone, lying on the table, kept lighting up again and again. The screen was filled with messages from Grace Miller. "What's wrong? Still work-related?" I asked, pretending to sound concerned. "Yeah," he replied quickly. "A client situation is urgent. I might have to go on another business trip tomorrow." Finally, I thought, let's see what excuse he uses this time. "Another trip? That sudden?" "Yes," he said, avoiding my gaze. "This client is really important. I can't afford to upset them. I might be gone for a few days." "Where to?" "Qingdao again." "Then let me go with you," I suggested casually. "My company isn't that busy lately anyway." Ryan's face instantly changed. "That's not necessary, it's for work. You'd just be bored." "But I want to go with you," I said softly, feigning sweetness. "The sea in Qingdao is beautiful. We could make it like a short vacation." He grew visibly nervous. "Really, Lena, there's no need. This trip is mainly for business. Maybe next time when I'm free, we'll go somewhere together." "All right then," I said, pretending to look disappointed. "But make sure you come home soon." "Of course," he said, breathing a sigh of relief, convinced that I dropped the idea. He had no idea I already had everything planned. By tomorrow, he would receive a surprise he'd never forget. Early the next morning, Ryan was up before dawn, frantically packing his suitcase. He had barely slept all night, texting Grace non-stop. She'd been threatening him, saying that if he didn't come back immediately, she would confront me and expose everything. Backed into a corner, he finally agreed to return to Qingdao at once. "Let me take you to the airport," I offered sweetly. "No need," he said too quickly. "I'll just call a cab." So he didn't even want me anywhere near the airport, probably afraid I'd see something I wasn't supposed to. "All right," I said with a smile. Be careful on the road. I stepped forward and hugged him. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too, he said, kissing me lightly on the lips. I love you. Those words again. How many times had he said them? Always so sincere, always so warm, and every time pure deception. I watched him walk out the door, and the moment he was gone, I got to work. It was time to give Ryan Parker a gift he would never forget. First, I contacted a friend in Qingdao. The Lewis Group had a branch office there, and I asked one of our local managers to help arrange a few things. Then I booked a flight for that afternoon. Ryan probably thought I was still at home, playing the fool, still trapped in his little act. But today I would personally expose his true face. At 3 o'clock sharp, my flight landed in Qingdao. David Lewis was already waiting at the arrivals gate. Miss Lewis, he said, greeting me politely. Everything's been arranged. Where are they now? I asked. At the hospital, he replied. Grace Miller's there for a prenatal checkup. Ryan went with her. Perfect, I said coldly. Let's go. We headed straight to the Qingdao Maternity Hospital VIP wing. From a distance I spotted Ryan sitting in the hallway, casually playing a game on his phone while waiting. He looked relaxed, completely at ease, without a hint of guilt or shame. His heart must have been carved out of stone. Miss Lewis, should we go in now? David asked quietly beside me. Not yet, I whispered. I need some pictures first. I took out my phone and snapped several clear photos of Ryan. A few minutes later, Grace came out of the examination room. Her belly was noticeably rounded, her face glowing with happiness. Ryan immediately stood up and rushed over to her. How did it go? What did the doctor say? Everything's fine, Grace said, her voice full of joy. It's a boy. Our son is healthy and strong. Really? Ryan's eyes lit up. He lifted her into his arms and spun her around. That's amazing. Keep your voice down. We're in a hospital, Grace giggled, lightly punching his shoulder. Sorry, Ryan laughed, kissing her on the forehead. I'm just so happy. I'm gonna be a dad. It was such a tender scene, a man and a woman overjoyed, eagerly anticipating the arrival of their child. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have been moved too. But the reality was that man already had a wife, and the wife, that would be me, stood just a few feet away, witnessing the entire performance unfold before my eyes. I raised my phone and recorded everything. This was Ryan Parker's true face. In front of me, he was the devoted, gentle husband. In front of Grace Miller, he became the caring, responsible man ready to start a family. His acting was impeccable, every move perfectly calculated. Let's get something to eat. I'm hungry, Grace said playfully, pouting. Sure, Ryan replied. We'll go to that seafood place you like best. They walked hand in hand toward the elevator, looking for all the world like a happy, loving couple. I followed quietly behind them, keeping just enough distance to avoid being noticed. At the restaurant, Ryan sat across from Grace, peeling shrimp for her and placing the meat on her plate with tenderness. Eat slowly, he said softly. Watch out for fish bones. You're so good to me, Grace said emotionally. If your wife saw how you take care of me like this, would she be jealous? Don't talk about her, Ryan said with a frown. I just want to be with you. Then when are you going to divorce her? Soon. I'm working on it, he said. You always say that. Grace snapped. Our baby is about to be born, Ryan. How much longer are you planning to drag this out? Grace, please, try to understand. He took her hand. Her family is extremely wealthy. If I rush the divorce, I'll walk away with nothing. So you're saying the only reason you haven't divorced her yet is because of money, not for our future? That's not it, Ryan said quickly. I'm doing this for our future. Once I get her money, we'll have everything we need for a good life. Really? Of course, I swear it. Sitting just a few tables away, I heard every word loud and clear. So that was it. Ryan Parker wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he was planning to rob me blind. To him, what was I? A fool. A wallet, an endless source of cash to fund his double life. I quietly took out my phone and recorded the entire conversation. Every word would serve as evidence. When I got back, I would make sure he paid for everything. Oh, right, Grace said sweetly. Your wife gave you $200,000, didn't she? Let's use that to buy things for the baby. Sure, Ryan said without hesitation. We can check out that baby store you like. Using my money to buy things for his illegitimate child. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay calm. Not yet, I told myself. Let them finish their little act. Then it'll be my turn. That afternoon, Ryan and Grace went to a baby boutique. They browsed through cribs, strollers, and every kind of toy imaginable. Ryan looked thrilled, just like an expectant father preparing for his first child. "How about this one?" Grace asked, pointing to a small crib. "That one's too plain," Ryan said, waving dismissively. "We should get the best one." "Money's not a problem." "Money's not a problem?" "Of course not. It wasn't his money. It was mine. My hard-earned money, my family's wealth, my trust. Watching them waste it so carelessly filled me with a rage so fierce I could barely breathe. But I held it in. Not yet. Soon enough, they would learn what karma really looked like. By evening, the two of them returned to their hotel, a 5-star resort costing over 3,000 yuan a night. And once again, all of it was on me. I waited downstairs for over an hour until I was certain they wouldn't go out again. Then I texted Ryan. "Honey, what are you doing?" "Just finished dinner. About to rest," he replied. "Was work tiring?" "It's fine. I just miss you," he wrote. "Miss me?" I thought coldly. "You're lying in bed with another woman right now." "I miss you too," I texted back. "Call me tomorrow, okay?" "Of course." "Good night, baby. Good night, sweetheart." I set the phone down and smiled, a sharp, icy smile. "Enjoy your last peaceful night, Ryan Parker. Tomorrow, your world ends." The next morning I arrived at the hotel bright and early. Upstairs, Ryan and Grace were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit them. Around 10 o'clock, they finally emerged. Grace clung to Ryan's arm, smiling radiantly as they walked out together. They both looked completely satisfied, as if last night had been perfect. I followed them quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike. Inside the hotel's restaurant, Ryan Parker pulled out a chair for Grace Miller like the perfect gentleman. "Thank you, honey," Grace said sweetly, smiling up at him. Honey. She'd just called him honey, right in public. My hands clenched so tightly I could hear my knuckles crack. That shameless woman, she knew very well he was married, yet she dared to call my husband that name. And Ryan? He only smiled contentedly and replied, "Anything for you, sweetheart." If I hadn't forced myself to stay calm, I might have walked straight over there and torn the smiles off both their faces. But I held back. Not yet. I wanted witnesses, lots of them. When the time came, everyone would see their true colors. "Ryan," Grace said softly, "I want to look at houses again. That villa we saw yesterday was beautiful." "I thought so too," Ryan said with a nod. "Great location, amazing view, but the 3 million deposit is a bit much." "It's okay," Grace said, rubbing her belly tenderly. "We can take out a loan. I just want our baby to have a happy home." "Don't worry," Ryan said, gripping her hand tightly, his voice dripping with fake devotion. "I'll make sure you and our baby have the best life possible." I watched them, biting back a bitter laugh. Everything he was giving her, the villa, the comfort, the love, it was all bought with my money. Without me, the foolish wife with the deep pockets, what could he possibly offer her? A man who used to earn 3,000 yuan a month as a salesman, could he afford a seaside mansion, a 5-star hotel? "Oh, by the way," Grace said suddenly, "how's your wife? She doesn't suspect anything, does she?" "No," Ryan replied with an arrogant smirk. "She's completely clueless. Just a dumb heiress, it's easy to fool her." "That's good," Grace said with a relieved smile. "Sometimes I worry we'll get caught." "Never," Ryan said confidently. "She trusts me completely. She'd never imagine I'd cheat on her." "You're awful," Grace teased, playfully hitting his shoulder. "I don't care," he said with a grin. "As long as I get to be with you." That was the last straw. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I pushed my chair back and strode straight toward their table. "Ryan Parker." At the sound of my voice, both of them froze. When Ryan turned and saw me, the color drained from his face. "Elena, what are you doing here?" "I just wanted to see what my husband was up to," I said coldly. "Didn't expect to find you on a honeymoon with your mistress." Grace's face went pale as well. You're his wife?" "That's right," I said, my voice steady. "I'm the rich fool he told you about." I stared at her. "You're his first love, aren't you? And that baby, it's his, isn't it?" By instinct, Grace placed a hand over her stomach. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," I said, dragging out a chair and sitting down across from them. "I just want to have a little chat. After all, there's so much we need to discuss." Sweat began to bead on Ryan's forehead. "Lena, I can explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted. "Why you've been lying to me for 3 years? Or why you've been using my money to support her?" Lena, I don't understand what you're talking about, he stammered. Don't understand? I pulled out my phone and played the audio recording. Grace, you have to understand. Her family's loaded. If I rush the divorce, I'll get nothing. So you're not divorcing her because of money? No, I'm doing this for us. Once I get her money, we'll have a good life. As the recording ended, the restaurant fell completely silent. Diners turned in their seats, staring, whispering, and exchanging judgmental looks. Ryan's face turned ashen. What? What is this? Still going to pretend? I said icily. Keep acting, Ryan. Let's see how far that talent of yours takes you now. I let out a cold laugh and played the next recording. Your wife gave you $200,000. Let's use it to buy things for our baby. Sure, let's go check out the baby store. I stopped the recording and looked straight at Ryan. Well, Ryan Parker, do you have anything left to say for yourself? He froze, his face drained of all color. Watching his panic brought me a deep, satisfying pleasure. Finally, that carefully crafted mask of his had been ripped away by my own hands. Lena, I can explain. Explain? I snapped, my voice rising sharply as I stood. What exactly do you plan to explain, Ryan? Explain why you've been lying to me for the past 3 years? Explain why you've been using my money to feed your mistress. Or explain why you got another woman pregnant while sleeping beside your wife every night. The entire restaurant went silent for a split second, then erupted in shocked whispers. Oh my God, what a disgusting man. He used his wife's money to keep another woman? And that mistress, she's no better. She knew he was married and still got involved. Everywhere around us, people were staring, whispering, pointing. Both Ryan and Grace kept their heads down, their faces burning with humiliation. They hadn't expected to be exposed like this, publicly, completely, and irreversibly. Lena, please, Ryan begged, voice trembling. Let's go home and talk about this. There are too many people here. Home? I scoffed. What home, Ryan? You destroyed that yourself. With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant. I'd seen enough of this farce. Now, it was time for him to pay the price. The moment I stepped outside, I went straight to the Lewis Group's Qingdao branch. The branch director, Mr. Michael Lee, was an old friend of my father's. The moment he heard what had happened, he was furious. Lena, he said sharply, that kind of man deserves to be taught a lesson. Tell me what you need. I need you to investigate the finances of Ryan Parker's company, I said calmly. I want to know where every cent of my money has gone these past 3 years. No problem, he said at once. Give me an hour. An hour later, the results arrived. Ryan's company was nothing more than an empty shell, no real business, no legitimate operations. The 5 million yuan I had given him over 3 years? Aside from what he sent to Grace Miller, the rest had been squandered. He'd used my money to buy luxury cars, designer suits, expensive watches, to build the illusion of a successful entrepreneur. Worse yet, he had used my money to shower Grace with gifts, handbags, jewelry, designer clothes, each more expensive than the last. As I looked through the transaction records, my hands shook with rage. Every yuan I had earned, every bit of effort I had put in, wasted like trash by the two of them. Lena, are you all right? Mr. Lee asked, concern in his voice. I'm fine, I said after a deep breath. Now it's time to strike back. The first step. I would make his company collapse. As the daughter of the Lewis Group, I had more than enough influence to make that happen. With just a few phone calls, every one of Ryan's business partners received notice. Anyone who continued working with him would be permanently blacklisted by the Lewis Group. His company had been struggling already, but now it was officially finished. Every door in the business world slammed shut in his face. Next, I reached out to the local media. In the age of social media, stories about cheating men and mistresses always spread like wildfire. I sent the reporters all the evidence, photos, voice recordings, bank transfers. Ms. Lewis, this is a bombshell, one reporter said, his voice trembling with excitement. We'll handle it carefully, don't worry. Make sure my identity stays private, I reminded him. Of course, we'll blur everything that links back to you, he assured me. Finally, I called home. Dad, you've heard about Ryan Parker, right? I have, my father said coldly. Michael Lee told me everything. That bastard, I never liked him from the start. I want him to pay for what he did, Dad. You're right, my father said firmly. No one gets away with humiliating a Lewis. Leave this to me. With the full weight of the Lewis Group behind me, Ryan Parker was as good as ruined. He wouldn't be able to buy a house, no bank would lend to him. He wouldn't be able to invest, no partner would dare work with him. He wouldn't even be able to find a job, no company would hire him. I would make sure he learned exactly what happens to a man who betrays me. The price he had to pay was only beginning to show. That afternoon, Ryan Parker called me non-stop, like a madman. I didn't answer. He texted, sent voice messages, even tried to video call me. I ignored every attempt. Now you're scared? Too late for that. By evening, he showed up at the Lewis Group's Qingdao branch. The security guards didn't let him in, so he stood outside the gate, waiting like a beggar. From the top floor, I looked down at him, lonely, pitiful, stripped of all his arrogance. No money, no status, no polished image. Ryan Parker was nothing more than a broken man now. I remembered when we first met, he'd been simple, modest, even a little shy. I had thought he was genuine, trustworthy. But now I understood that humility was just because he didn't have the money yet to fake something better. Once he had it, he didn't hesitate to show his true nature. When he saw me walking out, he rushed toward me immediately. "Lena, you finally agreed to see me." "Ryan Parker, you still have the nerve to show your face?" I said coldly. "Lena, I know I was wrong," he pleaded. "Please forgive me." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Forgive you?" I gave a bitter laugh. "For what exactly?" "We're husband and wife," he said desperately. "Can't we work things out together?" "Husband and wife?" I shot back, pointing right at him. "You cheated on me." My words hit him like a knife. His head dropped, his expression filled with a fake sadness that almost made me sick. "Lena," he said weakly, "I admit I made a mistake, but I truly love you." "Love me?" I nearly laughed out loud. "You used my money to support your mistress. You got another woman pregnant? That's your way of loving me?" "What happened with Grace? It was an accident," he stammered. "An accident?" I cut him off sharply. 3 years of lying was an accident? Her pregnancy was an accident? The villa you were buying was an accident too? He fell silent, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Lena, I can end things with Grace," he said hurriedly. "We can start over. Please, let's try again." "Start over?" I shook my head slowly. "Ryan, do you really think I'm still foolish enough to believe you?" "I swear I'll never betray you again," he insisted. "Your promises are worth nothing," I said icily. Turning away, I added, "There's nothing left between us." He chased after me. "Lena, you can't just walk away like this. We're legally married." "Legally married?" He still dared to say that. I stopped and turned back to face him. "You're right, Ryan, we are legally married, which means I have every legal right to deal with our shared assets, however I see fit." His expression changed instantly. "What are you going to do?" "You'll find out soon enough." I walked away without looking back. "Ryan Parker, this is just the beginning. Everything you did to me, I'll make you pay tenfold." The next morning, the story exploded across every major news site in Qingdao. Married man uses wife's money to support his mistress. Young entrepreneur exposed as a fraud. Wealthy heiress betrayed, cheater and mistress publicly shamed. Although my name was kept out of it, the photos of Ryan and Grace were everywhere. The internet erupted. He used his wife's money to keep another woman? Disgusting. That mistress is just as vile. She knew he was married. Justice for the betrayed wife. Make that scumbag couple pay. Reading those comments, I felt a flicker of vindication. At least there were still people in the world who knew right from wrong. Around noon, Ryan sent me a long message on WeChat. "Lena, I know I've wronged you. What I did can't be undone, but we can't change the past, only face the present. Grace is pregnant with my child, and I can't just abandon them. I know you don't want to see an innocent baby grow up without a father. Let's have an amicable divorce. I promise I'll never bother you again. Please, Lena, just let us go." His message read, "We only want to live a quiet life together." I almost laughed out loud when I finished reading it. Even now, he still didn't understand. He was actually begging me to forgive Grace Miller. He was still trying to protect her, still asking me to let them go. I typed a single word in reply, "Get lost." Then I blocked him forever. That afternoon, my lawyer called. "Miss Lewis," he said, "Mr. Parker's attorney reached out. They're requesting a mutual divorce agreement." "What's he proposing?" I asked. "He's asking to split all joint assets equally, the house, the car, and the savings." I let out a cold, sharp laugh. He really has no shame. Would you like me to reject the proposal outright? No, I said calmly. Set up a meeting. I'd like to make things clear in person. Understood, I'll arrange it. Ryan Parker wanted to divide the assets? Not a chance. For 3 years he'd spent my money like water. Now it was time to settle accounts properly. 2 days later we met at the law office. Ryan looked miserable, unkempt, unshaven, a shadow of the polished man he once pretended to be. Grace Miller was there too, sitting beside him. Her pregnant belly was now clearly visible. The moment I walked in, she shrank behind him as if I might attack her. Lena, Ryan said, standing up awkwardly, trying to greet me. I ignored him completely and sat down beside my lawyer. Let's begin, my lawyer said, opening the file. Mr. Parker proposes an amicable divorce with a 50-50 split of joint assets. Perfect, I said smoothly. Then let's settle the accounts. Ryan exhaled in relief, clearly mistaking my calm for agreement. First, I began. The house. It was purchased by my parents before our marriage. It's a premarital asset and has nothing to do with Ryan Parker. Ryan's face immediately went pale. But we lived there after we got married. Doesn't that count? Occupancy doesn't equal ownership, my lawyer said flatly. Second, the car is under my name. Ryan didn't contribute a single cent to it. But we're married, Ryan argued weakly. Doesn't that make it ours? Is your name on the ownership papers? My lawyer asked. Ryan fell silent. Lastly, I said, placing a thick stack of bank statements on the table, let's discuss the savings. Over the past 3 years, I transferred a total of 5 million yuan to him. Every transaction is accounted for. Ryan's face turned white as he scanned the papers. 3 million went to Grace Miller, I continued coldly. 1 million on his personal luxuries and another million poured into his fake company. That's just normal spending between husband and wife, he stammered. Normal? I sneered. Buying jewelry for your mistress is normal? Using my money to buy her a house, is that normal too? Grace's face flushed bright red. She lowered her head, unable to meet my eyes. Under marriage law, my lawyer said calmly, transferring marital assets to a third party without the spouse's consent constitutes fraud. Mr. Parker is legally obligated to return the full amount. What? Ryan shouted, panic flashing across his face. You mean I have to pay it back? That's right, my lawyer said evenly. All 5 million, not a yuan less. But I don't have that kind of money, Ryan stuttered. That's not our problem, I said, standing up. You have 3 days to present a repayment plan. If not, I'll see you in court. Lena, you can't do this to me, he pleaded. Can't I? I turned to look straight into his eyes. Ryan Parker, you deceived me for 3 years. Now it's your turn to face the consequences. Without another word, I walked out of the office, leaving his desperate voice echoing behind me. Lena, I didn't stop. I didn't look back. For me, this was over. As for him, he would spend the rest of his life drowning in the ruins of his own making. That man no longer deserved anything at all. He would never get another ounce of sympathy from me. After leaving the law office, I booked the earliest flight home. Everything in Qingdao was finally dealt with. Now it was time to face my real life again. By the time my plane landed, it was already 9 in the evening. I didn't bother calling a driver. I just quietly hailed a taxi and rode home alone. The city streets were familiar, the same buildings, the same lights, but I was no longer the same woman who had left just 3 days ago. When I walked out of this door before, I was still the fool who believed in his lies. Now, coming back, I had seen Ryan Parker's true face. The moment I stepped inside, the large apartment felt empty, eerily quiet. His things were still everywhere: clothes, books, personal belongings. Looking at them made me sick. Every single item had been bought with my money. And now, each one of them felt like a slap across my face, reminding me how blind I'd been. I pulled out my phone and called a moving service. Tomorrow morning at 9, clear out all of my husband's things. Send everything straight to the dump. All of it, ma'am? The worker asked. Every last piece, I said flatly. When I hung up, I immediately called my parents. Lena, you're home already? My mother's voice was full of concern. Yes, I just got in. We already heard about Ryan. My father's cold, steady voice came through the receiver. That bastard, I never liked him from the start. Come home for a few days, my mother said gently. You're always welcome here. Of course, I said, my chest tightening. Good, I'll have the housekeeper prepare your room. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. My mother chuckled softly. Don't thank us, sweetheart. We're family. I hung up, feeling warmth spread through the ache in my chest. At least I still had them, people who loved me genuinely, unconditionally. For 3 years I had let Ryan push me away from them. Now I finally understood how wrong I'd been. The next morning, the movers arrived right on time. I stood by and watched as every trace of Ryan Parker's existence was carried out of my home. I felt nothing, no sadness, no regret. Even when they picked up expensive items, I didn't care. I just wanted to erase every reminder of him from my life. Ma'am, one of the workers said, holding up a gold Rolex. This looks valuable. Are you sure you want to throw it away? That was his wedding gift, I said without hesitation. It cost nearly $20,000. Throw it out. And these clothes, they're all designer labels. Throw them all. Only when the apartment was completely empty did I finally breathe freely. For the first time in years, the space felt like mine. That afternoon, I went to my parents' house. The moment my mother saw me, she burst into tears. You've lost so much weight, she said, half scolding, half crying. It's my fault. I should have stopped you from marrying that man. It's not your fault, Mom, I said, hugging her. It's mine. I was stupid. My father sighed. Now do you see why we were against it? It wasn't about social status, we just saw what kind of man he really was. I'm sorry, Dad, I said quietly, for arguing with you back then. You're our daughter, he said firmly. Even when you make mistakes, we'll never abandon you. Over dinner, my father mentioned, Ryan Parker's back in the city. He came to your office looking for you, but the security team threw him out. Good, I said coldly. Let him come. I still have unfinished business with him. Be careful, Lena, my mother warned anxiously. A cornered animal can still bite. Don't worry, I reassured her. He won't get the chance. That afternoon I received a friend request from an unfamiliar number. It was Ryan. He'd changed his phone and was trying to reach me again. Lena, please meet me. There's something I want to tell you in person. I thought for a few seconds before replying. Fine. 3 p.m. tomorrow, at the cafe. Thank you. I'll be there, he wrote quickly. He probably thought I was softening, that I might take him back. How pathetic. I only wanted to look him in the eye and tell him to his face that we were finished. That night, I got a call from my lawyer. Miss Lewis? I've heard back from Ryan Parker's attorney. He's agreed to repay the $5 million, but he wants to pay in installments. How long are we talking? 10 years. I let out a sharp laugh. 10 years? Does he really think I'm that stupid? You think he'll even remember the debt in 10 years? So, how would you like me to respond? The lawyer asked. No more than 2 years, I said firmly, and you'll need a guarantor. Understood, my lawyer replied. I'll pass that along. Ryan Parker wanted to drag things out, hoping I'd soften with time. What a fool. There would be no mercy this time. The next afternoon, I arrived at the cafe right on time. Ryan was already there, waiting. He looked even worse than he had the day before, unshaven, exhausted, hollow-eyed. A cup of untouched coffee sat in front of him, the surface still smooth. When he saw me, he stood up immediately. Lena, you came, he said, his voice almost trembling. I sat across from him without ordering anything. Say what you came to say, I said coldly. He took a deep breath. Lena, I know I messed up, but can't we start over? Start over? I laughed bitterly. Ryan Parker, do you really think that's even possible? The situation with Grace, I can fix it, he said quickly. Fix it how? I cut in sharply. By telling her to get an abortion? Ryan went silent, guilt flickering across his face. Clearly, he didn't have the heart to give up the baby. So you still can't let her go, I said, shaking my head. Then there's nothing left for us to talk about. Lena, I know I was wrong, he pleaded. But who doesn't make mistakes? Mistakes, I nearly laughed again. You called deceit and betrayal mistakes? I never meant to hurt you, he said softly. But you did hurt me, I replied, looking him dead in the eye. For 3 years, Ryan. For 3 years you came home every night, ate the meals I cooked, told me you loved me, while your mind was with another woman. And now you have the nerve to tell me you didn't mean to. He had no response. Silence filled the space between us. Lena, he said finally, I really did love you once. Love me? I scoffed. When exactly was that? When you were lying to me to get my money, or when you were in bed with Grace Miller? It's not what you think, he stammered. Then what is it, Ryan? I stood, my voice cutting through the quiet cafe. You're still lying to me and to yourself. You never loved me. The only thing you ever loved was my money. Lena, please, don't say my name. I glared at him. From this moment on, there's nothing between us. I've already prepared the divorce papers. You just need to sign. I pulled the document from my bag and placed it in front of him. Ryan glanced at it, his face changing instantly. You want me to leave with nothing? So what? I asked. When we got married, you had nothing. You came to me with empty hands. You'll leave the same way. But we're husband and wife, he shouted. I gave a cold, humorless smile. Oh, now you remember we're husband and wife? Where was that memory when you were in bed with Grace Miller? He froze, unable to speak. Sign it, Ryan, I said. It's your only choice. And if I don't? Then I'll see you in court, I replied, taking the papers back. And when that happens, you won't just walk away empty-handed, you'll also pay damages for emotional distress. Emotional distress? He repeated, stunned. That's right, I'll sue you for bigamy, I said calmly. His face turned white. He clearly hadn't expected me to go that far. But Lena, you can't. Why not? I snapped. Grace is pregnant with your child. That alone establishes a de facto marital relationship under the law. You think you still have the right to make demands? Ryan was speechless. After a long silence, his shoulders slumped. Finally, he picked up the pen. I watched as he signed his name on the divorce papers. A rush of relief surged through me, a dark, satisfying kind of peace. Finally, the farce was over. Good, I said, gathering the documents. Now one more thing. About the $5 million you owe me, how do you plan to pay it back? I just need some time, he stammered. My lawyer has already spoken with yours, I said evenly. 2 years, maximum, and you'll need collateral. 2 years? He repeated, stunned. Where am I supposed to find that kind of money? Figure it out, I said coldly, rising to my feet. Sell your house, borrow, work, beg, I don't care how, but you'll pay it all back within 2 years. Lena, do you really have to be this heartless? Heartless? I laughed softly, shaking my head. Ryan Parker, you're the one who taught me how. Do you even know what being heartless really means? I leaned forward, staring straight into his eyes. Heartless is when you're in bed with Grace Miller and completely forget there's a wife waiting for you at home. Heartless is when you use my money to buy gifts for another woman and act like it's nothing. Heartless is when you get caught and still dare to ask me for forgiveness, and even for a share of my assets. Ryan Parker lowered his head, every word cutting through him like a blade. Now you understand what heartless truly means? I said, straightening up. This, Ryan, is the karma you deserve. Without another word, I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard him call my name, his voice trembling. Lena. But I didn't look back. Whatever existed between us was finished. I walked straight from the cafe to the civil affairs office. Even though Ryan had already signed the divorce papers, the process had to be finalized officially. He followed me the entire way, desperately trying to persuade me. Lena, can't we just think this over? He begged. I swear I'll never betray you again. Please, let's start over. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I ignored him completely and walked inside. When we handed in the paperwork, the clerk looked at us and asked, Are you sure you want a divorce? You're both still young. Yes, I said firmly. All right then. She nodded. We'll begin the process. 10 minutes later, the divorce certificate was ready. As I held the red booklet in my hand, a flood of emotions rose inside me. 3 years of marriage, just like that, it was over. Lena, Ryan began, his tone weak, pleading. Ryan, I cut him off. From this day forward, there's nothing between us. If you need to talk, have your lawyer contact mine. I turned and walked out without looking back. The moment I stepped outside the building, I felt as though I could finally breathe again, light, unburdened, free. Ryan Parker would never again have a place in my life. That evening, I had dinner with my parents. So it's finalized? My father asked. Yes, it's done, I replied quietly. Good, my mother sighed in relief. From now on, you're free. Do you have any plans now? My father asked. I'll probably return to work for a while, I said. I've fallen behind on too many projects. Work can wait, my mother said softly. Why don't you take a break, go abroad for a while, clear your mind? Not yet, I shook my head. There are still some things I need to finish with Ryan first. My father frowned. What more can that bastard do? He still owes you $5 million. Just make sure he pays every cent. With a man like that, I doubt he'll pay easily, my mother muttered. Then let him take his time, I said calmly. I'm not in a hurry. The next morning, I went back to work. Everyone already knew about my divorce. Their eyes followed me, some pitying, some curious, but no one dared to ask. I didn't feel like explaining anyway. I just threw myself into my work. The busyness helped. It kept my mind from wandering back to those painful memories. During lunch break, my secretary, Lily, knocked on my office door. Miss Lewis, there's someone here to see you, she said. Who is it? I asked. She says she's a friend of yours. I frowned. A friend? At this hour? Let her in, I said after a pause. A moment later, Lily opened the door and let in a woman. The instant I saw her, I froze. Grace Miller. What the hell was she doing here? She looked pale and fragile, her pregnancy showing clearly beneath loose clothing. She sat down carefully across from me, her head bowed, unable to meet my eyes. What are you doing here? I asked coldly. I came to apologize, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Apologize? I repeated, my tone like ice. Apologize for what exactly? I let out a cold laugh. Now you want to apologize? I know I was wrong, Grace Miller said softly, lifting her tear-filled eyes. I shouldn't have ruined your marriage. If you knew it was wrong, then why did you do it? I asked sharply. I don't know, she stammered before breaking into sobs. Maybe because I loved him too much. Watching her cry, I didn't feel even a flicker of sympathy. This woman knew perfectly well that Ryan Parker had a wife, and yet she kept clinging to him shamelessly. And now, when everything had fallen apart, she came to me trying to play the victim. You didn't come here just to apologize, did you? I asked coolly. Grace wiped her tears, her voice trembling. I wanted to ask you to forgive Ryan. Forgive him? I repeated, my tone like ice. He's suffering, she said weakly. Every day he blames himself, and the debt, he owes you so much money, the pressure is killing him. He made his choices, I said flatly. He can live with the consequences. But the baby in my belly is innocent, Grace whispered, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. If something happens to him, my child will grow up without a father. What does that have to do with me? My words were sharp, deliberate, and they pierced her like knives. Tears streamed down her face. I'm begging you, for the sake of this child, please, give him a chance to live, she pleaded. Grace Miller, I said evenly, you really think I should pity you? I know I don't have the right to ask, she murmured. You're right. You don't, I cut her off coldly. Ryan Parker was my husband. You were the other woman. And now, after everything you've both done, you come here begging for forgiveness? You think life works that way? Grace lowered her head, unable to respond. When you two were living it up in Qingdao, I continued, did you ever think of me? You used my money to buy a house, a car, living your perfect little fantasy. Did you think about the wife waiting at home? And now that it's all falling apart, you suddenly remember me? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she cried, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. If sorry could fix everything, I said coldly, standing up, we wouldn't need the law. You chose to be the mistress, Grace. Now you'll pay the price. Ryan owes me every cent, and I won't let him skip a single one. But he really doesn't have that kind of money, she whispered. Then he'll pay it back slowly, I replied, staring straight. Aren't you two in love? Then pay the debt together. I pressed the intercom. Lily, please show our guest out. Yes, ma'am, Lily said as she entered, turning to Grace. Miss, please leave. Grace looked like she wanted to say something more, but one glance at my face stopped her. She got up and left quietly. I watched her go without a shred of pity. You reap what you sow, I thought. After she left, I tried to refocus on work, but irritation simmered inside me. Her visit had stirred up every unpleasant memory I'd been trying to bury. That afternoon, my lawyer called. Miss Lewis, Ryan Parker wants to discuss his repayment plan. What's there to discuss? The contract terms are crystal clear. He says he really doesn't have the funds right now. He's asking to extend the repayment period. How long? I asked. 5 years. I laughed coldly. Unbelievable. He actually dares to ask for that? So should I take that as a refusal? Yes. Follow the contract. He has 2 years to pay it all back. Understood. I'll pass it on. After hanging up, I recalled Grace's words, that Ryan was miserable, blaming himself every day. Miserable? Regretful? That man actually knew what guilt felt like now? Where was that guilt when he was lying to me? When he was cheating on me? Now that he was finally facing consequences, he wanted to use remorse as a shield. Too late. When I got home that evening, I noticed someone crouched outside my door. It was Ryan. He looked pitiful, unkempt hair, dark circles, his clothes wrinkled and dirty. When he saw me, he jumped up immediately. "Lena, you're home," he said with a forced smile. "What are you doing here?" I asked coldly. "I just wanted to talk." "There's nothing left to talk about," I replied, pulling out my keys to unlock the door. "Lena, I really don't have that kind of money," he pleaded. "Please, just give me more time." "No," I said flatly without turning around. "Then I'll have to borrow from loan sharks," he said desperately. I stopped and turned to face him. "That's your problem, not mine." "Lena, do you really want to drive me to my death?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Drive you to your death?" I let out a cold laugh. "Ryan Parker, you give yourself too much credit. I'm only asking for what's mine. If that's enough to destroy you, that's on you." "5 million might be nothing to you," he said bitterly, "but to me it's an impossible amount." "Oh," I raised an eyebrow. "And when you were spending my money, why didn't you think it was an impossible amount back then?" I shot back. Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Ryan Parker," I said coldly, "the world is fair. You took advantage of me, so now you'll pay the price." "But," "No buts," I cut him off sharply. "If you truly can't pay it all now, then pay it little by little. I don't mind chasing you for the rest of your life." With that, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Bang! I slammed it shut behind me. Outside, he immediately started pounding on the door. Lena, please open up. Let's talk this through." I ignored him completely and walked out to the balcony. Pulling out my phone, I called the building manager. "Hello, this is the owner of Unit 1803, I said calmly. "There's someone causing a disturbance outside my door. Please take care of it." "Yes, ma'am. We'll send security up right away." 10 minutes later, the noise stopped. I went to the balcony and looked down. Ryan was standing by the gate of the complex, his head tilted up toward my window. Even from that distance, I could see the despair in his eyes. But I felt nothing, no pity, no sadness. "Ryan Parker, this is exactly what you deserve." The next morning, I received unexpected news. Ryan had been hospitalized. According to what I heard, he'd collapsed in the street from stress and exhaustion. A few minutes later, Grace Miller called me, sobbing. Please come see him," she begged through tears. "The doctor said he's in critical condition." "What does that have to do with me?" I asked, my voice cold. "Please, at least think of the baby," she pleaded. "Grace, haven't you said enough?" I snapped. "Whether Ryan lives or dies has nothing to do with me." "But, no buts," I interrupted and hung up. Still, I couldn't help feeling conflicted. Was Ryan really that sick? Or was this just another performance, one last attempt to make me pity him? After a while, I just did go to the hospital, not out of concern, but to see for myself whether this was another act. At the hospital, I found him lying on the bed, pale and weak, eyes closed. Grace sat beside him, her eyes red and swollen from crying. When she saw me enter, she quickly stood up. "Lena, you came." "How is he?" I asked flatly. "The doctor said he's suffering from acute gastritis," she explained, wiping her tears. "He's been overworked and under too much mental stress." I glanced at Ryan lying there. I felt nothing. "Then take good care of him," I said, turning to leave. "Lena," his weak voice stopped me. I turned around slowly. "What do you want to say?" I want to apologize," he whispered hoarsely. "I wronged you. I really did." "Do you think sorry changes anything now?" I asked quietly. "I know it doesn't," he said, his eyes glistening with tears. "But I needed to say it. Lena, I really did love you." "Love me?" I let out a bitter laugh. "When was that? When you were cheating? Or when you were spending my money on another woman?" "I loved you from the moment I met you," he said, his voice trembling. "Then why did you betray me?" Ryan fell silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Because I was greedy. I wanted your love and Grace's companionship. I thought I could have both. So you lied to us both," I said coldly. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his face twisting with pain. Looking at him lying there, weak, broken, pretending to be remorseful, I felt an odd sense of exhaustion. Even now, he was still deceiving himself, thinking one word, sorry, could undo everything. "Ryan Parker," I said quietly, "you still owe me that money. Don't forget it." Without another word, I turned and walked out. Behind me, Grace broke into sobs, and I heard Ryan let out a long, defeated sigh. But I didn't look back. Some mistakes can never be forgiven. After leaving the hospital, I didn't go home right away. Instead, I stopped by the bank to verify his financial status. The results didn't surprise me. Ryan Parker was completely broke. His bank account held only a few $1,000s, and his company account was completely empty. Other than an old car, Ryan Parker practically had no assets left. He had truly become a penniless man. But that wasn't my concern. If he didn't have money, he could pay me back slowly. I had all the time in the world to wait. A month later, Ryan was discharged from the hospital. He started going around looking for work, trying to earn money to repay his debt. But with his reputation ruined online, no company wanted to hire him. In the end, he could only take a delivery job, earning barely $30 or $40 a day. After deducting living expenses, there was hardly anything left to save. At this rate, it would take him decades to pay back the $5 million. Grace Miller managed to find a job too, but with her pregnancy, she couldn't work much. The two of them rented a basement apartment, living in hardship and poverty. When I heard about it, I didn't feel the slightest bit of pity. This was the retribution they both deserved. Months passed, and Grace eventually gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Ryan texted me to say the baby had arrived, hoping that I could forgive him now. I didn't reply. That child had nothing to do with me, and I wasn't about to forgive Ryan Parker for it. Some wounds simply never heal. Half a year later, I ran into Ryan by chance at a shopping mall. He was pushing a stroller, holding his son in his arms. He looked thinner, older, worn down by life. When he saw me, he froze for a moment before walking toward me. "Lena," he said softly. "Ryan." I nodded, my voice calm and distant. "Are you doing all right?" he asked. "I'm fine," I replied. "That's good." He smiled faintly, though the bitterness in his eyes was unmistakable. I glanced at the baby in his arms. He was small and delicate, adorable, even. "Your son?" I asked. "Yeah," Ryan said, his voice softening as he looked down. "His name is William Parker. He's a good boy." "He's cute," I said simply. "Thank you." We stood there in silence for a moment, then Ryan spoke again. "Lena, can I ask you something?" "What is it? Do you still hate me?" I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "No. Hating someone is exhausting." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "Then, can you forgive me?" I shook my head. "Forgiveness and hatred aren't the same thing. I don't hate you anymore, but I'll never forgive you either. Some things can't be forgiven." Ryan lowered his head. "I understand." "Ryan Parker," I said quietly, "take good care of your son. Live a decent life. What's done is done. Let it stay in the past." He nodded slowly. "And, about the money?" "You still have to pay it back," I said. "But I won't rush you. Take your time." Tears welled in his eyes. "Thank you, Lena." "No need to thank me," I said. Turning away, I added, "In the end, we're just strangers now." Without looking back, I walked away. Behind me, I could hear the baby start to cry, and Ryan murmuring softly to calm him. But none of that mattered anymore. The name Ryan Parker no longer carried any weight in my life. Now I had a new beginning, new goals, a new reason to live. This time, I was living for myself, not for anyone else. Sunlight streamed through the skylight of the shopping mall, warming my face. For the first time in years, I felt completely light and free. Goodbye, Ryan Parker. Goodbye for real. This time, it truly was the end.